Be Yourself, a podcast with Ian O'Connell. Inspiring stories, great interviews.
Hello, my name is Ian O'Connell and welcome to the Be Yourself podcast. In the first episode, I'm basically just going to go through the day my life changed on the 16th of August back in 2017. It was a normal day. I was in town with my friend, I was shopping. I think we were actually getting a birthday present for her friend. I ended up buying a PlayStation game. And when I came home, I put the PlayStation game in and I was playing it for a few hours. I remember then I got a phone call from my friend. I just let it ring out because I wanted to stay playing the game. About 20 minutes later, I got another phone call. So I said I better answer because it wouldn't be like this friend to ring. He'd always text if he wanted someone. So he invited me up to his house as there was friends up there. So at first I wasn't going to go up because number one, I was too lazy. And number two, I wanted to stay playing my PlayStation game. When I went up to the house, we played a game of soccer and a game of rugby, whatever. And one thing kind of led to another. And we decided to go for a cycle. So we hopped on our bikes like we did every other day that summer. And we headed for Muckross National Park in Killarney. I remember going through a forestry area with a flat path on the smooth tarmac, looking out at the lake and the deer on either side of us. It was a nice day. It was a bit cold, but I remember the sun was shining, so that was the main thing. Then we came to a hill that we would have gone down 10 times every day during the summer. We always used to go on this path. It was kind of a walking path, but we used to go down it on our bikes as just boys being boys, doing stupid things. I was on the outside of all my friends going down the hill on the bikes. I was on the very outside and we were going down, and I remember just before I fell, I seen a log. It was kind of overgrown with grass, and before I knew it, my front wheel had hit the log, thrown me 8 feet over the handlebars, landing on my neck, cracking it and breaking my neck. I remember hearing a very clear crack and my body just went lifeless. I didn't know that I was there myself. My arm hit the ground with a thud. No feeling, no movement. Trust me, it's a weird feeling when you fall and you go to get up and you can't. You know, when my friends cycled on as they didn't think I was in a bad situation, as we would be falling off our bikes all the time. Little did I know that going down the hill this day I wouldn't get back up. I remember lying down, looking up at the sky, waiting for my friends to come back. All I could move was my eyes. But anyway, after a few seconds, the boys noticed that something's actually wrong here with Ian. I remember saying to my friend Michael, I said, "Michael, look, I'm paralysed." I remember him saying, "Ian, shut up, don't say that." I said to my friend, "Will you touch my hand?" I said, "Just rub my hand, don't lift it, just rub it," because I wanted to see, could I feel it? Anyway, he rubbed it, lifeless. I remember having no feeling at all. I said to my friend, "Rub my leg." He rubbed it, no feeling. The one thing I said to my friends was not to move me. I said, "We'll wait till the experts come." So I said to my friend Dermot, "Ring an ambulance quick." He kind of hesitated, as we didn't have this kind of experience before, falling and having to ring an ambulance. Anyway, as we were in the national park, the gates were after being locked up for the night, as it was around 7:30. But there were still loads of people out walking and running. It was a summer's evening and the sun was still out. So after we realised that the ambulance was after being phoned, that the gates were closed, and just coincidentally my friend used to work in the national park during the summer, so he knew the person who had the keys for the gate. So he rang them and told them our situation, what was after happening. So thank God we got the gates opened. And I'd say we were waiting about 20 minutes. And while my friend was on the phone to the ambulance, I remember my breathing. My breathing started to go, and I got really worried. I said, "Tell them my breathing's going." To tell you the truth, as much as I don't want to say it, I thought I was going to die that day. I was just looking up at the sky, saying a prayer. I said, God, don't take me now. Anyway, after a while of waiting, the ambulance arrived at the scene where we were. And I remember them coming down, kneeling down beside me, introducing themselves. In their bright yellow jackets, it was like something in a movie. They introduced themselves to me and they were asking loads of questions. Can you feel this? No. Can you feel that? No. Can you tell me what time it is? No. I remember them asking me then, did I stay conscious? I stayed conscious when I fell, because luckily I didn't hit my head. That's the one thing I say to this day, thank God I didn't hit my head, or I could have a brain injury. As whatever situation I'm in now, if I had a brain injury it could be 20 times worse. They stabilised my neck with a neck brace, and trust me, it was the most uncomfortablest thing I have ever encountered in my life. Sweating inside, it was itchy, and they couldn't move it after putting it on, as I had to keep it still. I remember them then putting me onto a bed that blew up around me to keep the rest of my body still. They cut my clothes off and they were examining all my body for other injuries, but trust me, the one injury I got was the worst injury you could ever get. Breaking your neck, paralysed. I remember on the way up to the ambulance, they were all lifting the stretcher on either side. When I was in the ambulance, they were asking me questions. Do you know what day it is? I knew, because I stayed conscious. They were asking me, are you after any alcohol or drugs today? No, of course not. I remember the blue lights turning on and the sirens racing. Nina, Nina. It was like we were in a race. We were speeding through Killarney. A journey that usually took about a half an hour took about 12 minutes, I think. I remember arriving in Tralee General Hospital. The 2 doors were open, ready for me. Once I got inside the door of A&E, there was doctors, nurses, consultants around me. It was like something from CSI. Anyway, after being in A&E, I was transferred upstairs to the orthopaedic ward, where I then met the main doctor. While I was in Tralee, it really just seemed like endless x-rays, MRIs, head scans, everything, all examinations. The worst thing I can remember from being in Tralee was the MRI machine. Trust me, it's weird going into a machine, not being able to move. After all the examinations, I remember the doctor coming up to me saying, Ian, you have broken your neck and you're paralysed. I had broken my C3, C4, C5, and I had a fracture to C6, so my injury was fairly high up in the spinal cord. He also broke the news to me that I had developed a collapsed lung and a bleed to the brain. I didn't know anything about these injuries, so it didn't seem like much at the time. Minutes turned into hours and hours turned into days when I was in Tralee. 10 days later, I remember them coming to me telling me that I was getting transferred to either Cork Hospital or to Dublin in the matter. He said to me, we're thinking of transferring you by ambulance, or else we're going to transfer you by helicopter. A helicopter ride was something I always wanted to do, but I suppose this time wasn't the best time to go on a helicopter and enjoy it. They decided to transfer me by ambulance as my breathing wasn't strong enough to go in the helicopter. 10 days later, on the Thursday evening anyway, I remember them coming to me saying, we are transferring you today. We're going to give you an anaesthetic to put you to sleep for the journey. That's the last thing I can remember for being in Tralee. Nurses saying, we are giving you the anaesthetic now. That was on the Thursday evening. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in the intensive care unit in the Mater Hospital. Ventilated, tubes hanging out from my neck, my body, a ventilator breathing for me. I didn't have the power to speak. I didn't have the power to breathe myself. When I woke up, I was told the news that I was after having my operation while I was in the induced coma. For you that don't know an induced coma, it's not a coma. That's just the name they give it, that puts you to sleep for a while. I spent about 2 weeks in the intensive care unit in the Mater. I was then moved upstairs to the spinal unit. There is only 9 beds in the whole of Ireland for people that are after having spinal cord injuries. So I was waiting for a bed for a while and I was lucky to get one. I remember going upstairs. I was still ventilated and the ventilator was breathing for me. The first memory I have of the spinal unit is asking one of the nurses for a drink. I didn't have the power to speak to ask him, so I was talking by the alphabet. They would hold a sheet with the letters A to Z in front of me. They would then run their finger along the letters and I would nod when to stop. So I was talking with my head nodding. I remember the nurse getting a bit angry as I was frustrating him. I was frustrating myself to say the least. 4 months later it was Christmas. I remember being in hospital for Christmas. It was something I never thought I would experience, but I did. My ventilator came out about 2 weeks before Christmas, and they told me once my ventilator was out that we would transfer you to the Rehabilitation Centre in Dunleary. I remember my ventilator coming out and I saying to the nurses, "Don't tell the doctor that my ventilator is out." The reason I was saying this is because I didn't want to get transferred just a week before Christmas, as I wouldn't know anybody in the rehab. I was after developing a good relationship with the nurses in the spinal unit, so I would rather experience Christmas with them. It was a funny situation because when I told them not to tell my doctor that my ventilator was out, she was actually standing outside my cubicle and she said, "I know, Ian, I know it's out." So after a while of debating then, they finally let me stay for Christmas. To say the least, it wasn't a bad Christmas. My parents were allowed to stay in my room late. I was allowed to go out to the family room with my parents to watch the Late Late Toy Show. My father brought Chinese that night. I still remembered stuffing my face with chocolates. Christmas Day we were allowed outside for 2 hours. We went to the Maldron Hotel. It was about 15 minutes walk from the hospital. I remember getting my Christmas dinner there. I was now after developing muscles to breathe myself again after the ventilator was out. I remember getting fed through a tube 3 months, so it was nice to be able to eat my Christmas dinner myself. Christmas came and went and I then got transferred. I remember my first day arriving in the rehab. It was dull. There was nobody on the ward as they were all out at physio and occupational therapy. I remember getting greeted with a big lamb dinner and a big glass of milk. After about 2 days being in bed, I remember getting my wheelchair, my program for my rehab, my program for my physio, and things that were going on. After a lot of intense physio and occupational therapy, I remember I was getting healthier back in myself and I was developing more muscles. One of the best memories I have from being in the rehab was one day Conor McGregor's coach, John Kavanagh, came in to visit me. I remember nearly standing up out of the chair when I saw him coming into my room. I remember getting asked by a lot of people what was the worst thing about the injury, and I would always tell them, nerve pain is something I really suffered from. When my spinal cord was severed when I fell, the nerves went all over the place and they were not working properly. So that meant that I got severe neuropathic pain, which is basically like your hands getting burned, or another way I really described it was getting dragged along grit. So while I was in the rehab, I went to the hydrotherapy pool and it was really good for the nerve pain and for my muscles for loosening them out. A few weeks into the rehab, I remember one of the nurses coming up to me saying, "Ian, I don't want to be saying this, but you do know you're not going to get movement back with the injury you have." There was a lot going through my mind when she said that. I felt like telling her to F off, but I just smiled and I said, "Watch me." Anyway, after 4 months, I was allowed home for St. Patrick's weekend. I was allowed home for, I think, 3 nights. It was a weird feeling coming into Killarney in the car, seeing where I grew up for so long, seeing people I knew again. I remember I went marching in the parade with my local GA club, Spa GA. All the people on the streets cheering and saying, "Well done, Ian." It was a good experience. It really touched my heart that people knew I was there and that they were supporting me. 3 days later, it was time to go back up to rehab and finish my program. I remember it was all last things we were doing, such as meeting the public health nurse that I would have at home, my carers, just meetings, sorting everything out for before I went home. I remember when they told me I was allowed to go home, there was a rush of adrenaline. I was so happy and grateful. 9 months later, my hospital stay was over and I came home. 3 things I learned from being in hospital was: 1. Continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. Hard work pays off. I know it's such a cliche, but it's so true. And I think you have to experience something I went through to realise that if you put your mind to something, that it does pay off. And the third thing I really took from being in hospital was people are good. It's only when you are in such a situation like this that you realise how good people are. What I have learned is to be good to people because you do not know when you will need them in your life. Support is good and it means a lot to me. I am so grateful for everybody that has helped me out and done stuff for me since my accident. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking about what life was like when I came home, what life has been like up to now, and what lies ahead of me. Thank you for listening to episode 1 of Be Yourself, and you can follow me on Instagram. My name is Ian O'Connell 321. Thank you for listening, and until next time, be yourself and be happy. And if you can't stand up, stand out.